My Amish partner called it correction. I learned the real name 5 years later. The notebook is small. It is green. The cover is soft now from 39 years of being opened and closed by the same two hands. I am sitting at my kitchen table in Holmes County, Ohio, and the page in front of me has one word written down its length, 41 times, in my own careful handwriting. The word is correction. My husband's word. The word he used the way other men used a belt, except his hands never moved, and the bruise was never on my skin. I am 78 years old. My name is Miriam. I have kept this notebook hidden for 39 years inside the lining of a quilt my mother stitched before she died. Not my 7 daughters, not my sister Anna, not the bishop who buried my Eli. None of them ever saw this page. He never raised his hand to me. That is what made it last so long. And the word I write beside correction now, in the same careful hand, is not a word I learned from any sermon. It is the word a stranger gave me at my own front door. Before I turn this page, sit with me a while. Pour something warm. The lamp is lit and the kitchen is quiet, and there is room at this table for one more. If my voice finds you tonight, tell me in the comments where you are listening from. A town, a porch, a kitchen of your own. I read each one, and if these stories belong in your evenings, follow along so the next confession finds its way to you. I am glad you are here. The first time Eli spoke the word to me, I was 23 years old. We had been married 9 months. It was the spring my sister Anna got married at her husband's farm, and the long table outside was loaded with bowls of noodles and stewed chicken, and there was a pie I had baked from rhubarb I pulled that morning. Someone told a joke I do not even remember anymore. I laughed. I laughed loud, with my head tipped back, the way a girl laughs when she still believes joy is a thing you are allowed to keep. I felt Eli's eyes from across the yard before I felt the silence settling around my own laughter. He did not speak to me on the ride home. He folded his hands in his lap the way he always did before he had something to say, and the buggy moved slow through the dusk, and I watched the maple trees pass and counted them so I would not have to count my own heartbeats. When we got home, he lit the kerosene lamp. He sat me on the bench beside the iron stove. The bench squeaked the way it always did. He folded his hands again. He said, "Miriam, this is correction." He said it the way a doctor says the name of a small illness, with patience, with a kind of tenderness. He said a wife who laughs that way invites Hawkmoot into the house. He said his job was to keep our home from pride. I cried that night. I cried because I believed him. I believed I had brought something dirty into our young marriage by laughing too loud at my own sister's table. You have to understand what Gelassenheit means before you can understand why I yielded. It is the word the plain people use for letting go. Letting go of your own will. Letting go of your own wanting. A wife yields to her husband the way the husband yields to the church, and the church yields to God. And the line is supposed to flow downward like clean water. I was raised on that word. My mother yielded. My grandmother yielded. When Eli said correction, he was holding up a word that had been polished by 100 years of plain hands before him, and I did not have any word of my own that could stand against it. So I folded mine away too. I folded my laughter into the cedar chest at the foot of our bed. I did not take it out again. The second time the word came was the winter I turned 26. An English neighbor had left a stack of newspapers on our porch, tied with twine, meant for kindling. I sat by the stove one afternoon while Eli was at the barn, and I unfolded one of those papers and I read. I read about a flood in a place I had never heard of. I read about a woman who had written a book. I felt something move inside my chest that I had not felt since the wedding. I felt curious. I felt awake. When Eli came in from the cold, the paper was still open across my knees. He did not shout. Eli never shouted. He smiled. That was the thing about Eli. He smiled while he did it. He took the paper gently from my lap the way a father takes a sharp knife from a child. He folded it. He set it on the stove. He watched it catch. He sat down beside me and folded his hands and said, "Miriam, this is correction." He said the English world was a long road with no fence at the end. He said a wife with a curious mind was a wife the devil could borrow. He said it kindly. He kissed the top of my prayer cap when he was done. The paper turned to ash. I never asked for another one. I did not read English for the next 31 years. If anyone has ever made you feel small inside a kind voice, you already know what I am about to say next. Stay with me a moment. If these confessions matter to you, the bell beside the subscribe button is the only way the next one finds its way to your evening. And if you have ever sat where I sat, on a bench that squeaked, listening to a kind man explain you to yourself, leave one word in the comments. Just one. I will know what it means. By the time I was in my 40s, I had stopped counting the corrections. There had been the wedding, there had been the newspaper, there had been the dress I sewed a half-inch too short, there had been the song I hummed while kneading bread on a Sunday, there had been the day I told the midwife I was too tired to host the fellowship meal, and Eli folded his hands that night, and the word came again, soft as snow. Correction, he said. A faithful wife does not name her tiredness out loud. A faithful wife yields. I yielded. I always yielded. I yielded so many times my knees forgot how to lock. And then there was the baby. I will only say her name once in this telling because I never said it out loud to anyone for 47 years. Her name was Ruth. She was born still, in the back bedroom, on a Tuesday in October, and I held her for 23 minutes before they took her from my arms. I wept for a week. I wept while I canned tomatoes. I wept while I hung the wash. On the 8th day, Eli sat me on the bench by the stove. He folded his hands. He said, "Miriam, this is correction." He said grief that lasts longer than a week is grief that has forgotten God. And for the first time in 19 years of marriage, something inside me did not bend when he said the word. It did not break either. It just stood still, very quiet, and listened. Because for the first time, I knew the word he was using did not fit the thing he was naming. I just did not yet know what the real name was. I carried that quiet thing inside me for another 14 years. I did not name it. I did not write it down yet. I cooked, I canned, I raised my 7 daughters. I sewed their wedding dresses one by one, and every time Eli folded his hands, I felt the quiet thing inside me shift like a stone settling deeper into a riverbed. I loved him still. That is the part nobody outside a long marriage understands. You can love a man and still feel the slow erosion of yourself at his kind, kind hands. I loved him the way you love a house you have lived in too long to leave, even when the windows no longer open. The winter I was 56, Eli got pneumonia. The cough came on a Sunday, and by Wednesday he could not sit up in the bed without help. The bishop's wife sent for an English nurse from the clinic in town, because our own remedies were not bringing the fever down. The nurse came on a Thursday morning with a black bag and a soft voice, and hair the color of wheat going to seed. Her name was Joanne. She stayed 3 days. She slept on a cot in the front room. She listened to Eli's lungs and gave him medicine, and spoke to him with a respect that made him calmer than I had seen him in years. On the second afternoon, I brought Eli a cup of tea. I had steeped the wrong leaves. He pushed the cup back across the quilt without looking at me. He folded his hands on top of the blanket. He did not even need to say the word anymore. I had learned to hear it in the folding. I began to apologize. I apologized for the tea. I apologized for the steeping. I apologized for not remembering which jar held which leaves. I apologized the way a woman apologizes when she has been apologizing for 33 years, in a low, steady voice that does not stop on its own. I did not see Joanne standing in the doorway behind me with the medicine tray in her hands. I want to pause here, because I know some of you are hearing your own kitchen in mine. Maybe it was not a husband. Maybe it was a father. Maybe it was a mother who had a soft word for the thing she did to you when no one else was in the room. If a word was used to make you small, you already know how heavy a soft word can be. Stay with me at this table, and if it helps, write that word down in the comments. Just the word, nothing else. Sometimes setting a word outside your own chest is the first quiet thing. Joanne did not say anything that afternoon. She set the medicine tray down. She helped Eli sit up. She gave him his pills. She walked past me on her way back to the kitchen, and her hand touched my shoulder, just once, very light, the way you might touch a horse that has been standing too long in the cold. That was all. She left on the 3rd morning. Eli was sleeping. I walked her to the front door with her black bag. She stopped on the porch step. She turned around and she looked at me the way a woman looks at another woman across a long fence, and she said one sentence, just one. I will not write it here yet because I want you to feel the weight of it the way I felt it. I was holding the empty washing bowl when she said it. The bowl was blue with a chip on the rim. When she finished the sentence and walked down the porch steps, my knees went soft and I had to sit down on the bench beside the door, the same kind of bench that squeaked, and I held that blue bowl on my lap for I do not know how long. The word she had used was not a word from any sermon I had ever heard. It was a small, plain English word. It did not have any holiness on it. It did not have any softness on it. It just sat there in my lap beside the bowl, waiting for me to look at it. The word was coercion. She had said, "What he is doing to you has a name, and the name is coercion." That was the whole sentence. She did not say abuse. She did not say cruelty. She did not say leave him. She gave me a word that did not require bruises to be true, and then she got in her car and drove away, and I never saw her again. I tore a small piece of paper from the back of my receipt book that afternoon, and I wrote the word down, and I folded it into the pocket of my apron. I carried it there for 5 years. I did not write it in the green notebook yet. I was not ready. I tested it instead. I tested it against the wedding where I laughed too loud. It fit. I tested it against the newspaper that burned on the stove. It fit. I tested it against the bench, the folded hands, the kind smile, the soft voice, the 47 years of correction, correction, correction. It fit every single time. But the hardest test was Ruth. I sat with the folded paper in my apron pocket on the anniversary of her stillbirth, and I asked the word if it fit the way Eli had named my grief a sin. It fit. And on the 5th anniversary of Joanne's visit, on a Tuesday in October, I opened the green notebook for the first time in years, and I took up my pen, and beside each one of the 41 corrections, I wrote the real name. Coercion. 41 times. The handwriting matched. The page was full. I did not weep. I did not tell Eli. I did not pack a bag. I did not leave. Something inside me simply stopped bending, the way a tree stops bending when the wind finally drops. Eli died 3 years later, in the same back bedroom where Ruth had been born. I sat with him at the end. I held his hand. I loved him still. I buried him in a white burial shirt I had stitched myself, in a pine coffin built by his brother, under the maple tree at the edge of our field. Both words still live in the green notebook on my kitchen table. I am 78 now. I have learned that naming a thing truly does not always mean burning the house down. Sometimes it just means you stop burning yourself down inside it. My Eli was one man. He was not the plain people. He was not the ordnung. He was one good man who used a holy word for something it was never meant to cover, and I do not know if he ever knew the difference. I hope where he is now, someone has told him gently. So I will tell you what I wish someone had told me at 23, at 26, at 42, at 56. If somebody has given your pain a soft name, write the true name down tonight. You do not have to show anyone. You do not have to leave. You do not have to confront. You only have to know. Knowing is the first quiet thing that belongs only to you. There is much more I have not yet said, and if you want to sit at this table again on another evening, the lamp will be lit and there will be a chair. Tell me in the comments which word you carried in this telling. Tell me what part of it you will carry into tomorrow. And before you close your eyes tonight, find your own small notebook. Write the real word down. The page will keep it. The page has kept mine for 39 years, and it has never once called me by the wrong name.